All right, let's get into the discussion now. President Muhammadu Buhari has approved the suspension of the removal of fuel subsidy. That the Minister of Petroleum and Resources had a meeting with the President and disclosed that this suspension was to allow all stakeholders to put modalities into place to cushion the effect of the subsidy removal. We have the report here before we start talking.
Speculations that fuel pump price would rise to as much as 308 naira per litre had put the fear of God in many Nigerians. Arguments from many quarters had condemned putting such a burden on the average citizen. The tide had seemed to change when the President of the Senate, Ahmad Lawan, had insisted vigorously that the executive and legislature had to find another way, as Nigerians already had enough on their plate. He went further to disclose that President Buhari had not authorized the removal of fuel subsidies.
Mr. President never told anyone that the petroleum subsidy should be removed. I know and I agree that the subsidy is very heavy, but I think we must never transfer the burden to the citizens.
Then came the meeting between the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, the Minister of State Petroleum, Silva, and the President of the Senate. There, the Finance Minister disclosed that the federal government now plans to make additional provisions for fuel subsidy in the 2022 budget. Another meeting at the presidential villa has now buttressed this. At the end of the meeting with the President, Minister of State Petroleum, Silva, briefed journalists on the next step concerning the fuel subsidy.
Following extensive consultations with all key stakeholders within and outside the government, it has been agreed that the implementation period for the removal of the subsidy should be extended.
The executive is proposing to the National Assembly an 18-month extension on the implementation of the Petroleum Industry Act, PIA, meant to kickstart this February.
The PIA also envisaged the potential for supply disruption with its resultant effect on the economy. Consequently, it provides for a window of 6 months from the effective date for government to request the services of NNPC Limited as supplier of last resort.
President Buhari had on 16 August 2021 signed the Petroleum Industry Bill into law. President Buhari's assent to the bill was in furtherance to the passage of the bill by both the Senate and House of Representatives earlier in July 2021. Tai Amodu, TVC News, Abuja.
All right, that's the background to our discussion now. And joining me in the studio to help make sense of all of these, the publisher inside Watch Africa here, Oluwaseyi Adeyemo. Good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning, Mike.
Great.
Good to see you.
Great. You're welcome. And I also have public affairs analyst Hakeem Adeleke here. Hakeem, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Nigeria.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good.
Great. Now, if you listen to the Minister of State for Petroleum in that report, he said that after due consultation, it means they had sleepless nights of meeting, making calls, reaching out to people and all of that. But they have come up, what they came out with is to suspend the petroleum subsidy removal and all of that. Now, we've been on this for so long, not just 1 decade, more than that. I wonder what you make. Have we all ran out of ideas on how to handle the subsidy thing? I'd like to let me start with you, Shay.
The truth is, Mike, if I tell you that I'm not worried, I will be lying. It's worrisome because we had a need because there was what they call the great inflation in the 70s. President Olusegun Obasanjo at the time felt that there was a need to cushion the effect of that inflation, and at the end of the day decided that, without even telling us, that it will sort of subsidize certain things. And it wasn't just the fuel, it was education, health, and a host of things. Right. Now, we all have come to the conclusion that this is no longer sustainable. And we have gone back and forth. For me, the person who did the most job haven't engaged, and again, let me use the word of the minister, sleepless night and all of that, extensive engagement, was President Jonathan, who brought in his team, the governor of Central Bank, Lamidu Sanusi at the time, the Minister of Finance, Okonjo-Iweala at the time, and they came and they told all of us that Nigerians, stop kidding yourself, this thing is not sustainable. And they went ahead and removed it. And for whatever reason, we all of us, went out and said, no, never, this cannot happen. And we put so much pressure on the government at the time, including the government of today. They played some role, whether for politics or for whatever reason, and that thing was reversed. Now, they themselves sat on the seat and realized that this is not sustainable. And now they went ahead. All of us celebrated the PIB and said, oh, wow, thank God. For whatever reason, they now see it that the only way to run this is to bring in private participation. We now have NNPC PLC. One of the most important conditions to run that PIB is that there will be no subsidy. Now, the thing has been signed, is meant to take off. We have now realized, because election is very close, that we cannot sustain it. And so, Mr. President has now approved. It's a little, I don't know how to describe it, because for me, you are making Labour look like they are not Nigerians, or that they are, doing something for another reason. No, we all, and Labour has been brought on board on several occasions by several governments to say, we want you to be part of the decision process thing. And for me, whatever they come to announce, it's a function and a product of that engagement. So if they now come and say to us, this is the way they're going to go, and all of a sudden Labour is saying no, it means that a couple of things that they agreed on where we were not there had not been done. So if they had not been done, why did they come out to announce those things? Because those things also play out with the doctors, it play out with the lecturers. Why do government go in to discuss with people, intellectuals, professors, doctors, labor people, and at the end of the day come through the back and come and tell us something, and at the end of the day we will now be doing all this back and forth? It's worrisome. I think let's just leave it at that for now.
Okay. Well, Hakeem, from your perspective, I wonder what you see here, because the conditions that NLC or the organized labor have always put out there is removal of subsidy. Okay, no problem, but there are conditions, and one of it is that refineries have to work. Put them in order, let them be working. If they are working, then we know that, okay, this subsidy removal thing it won't be an issue. Why do you think it's so challenging? What is that big thing that is so big that we can't handle regarding the refineries working and then, taking this thing headlong?
Interests. There are so many interests in the petroleum sector. Sorry, permit me for my voice is not very.
No, it's all right. It's okay, but we can hear you. It's fine.
The petroleum sector is not open. Generally, there are so many EDTs that is taking place back and forth. So, when you have a sector where there are so many interests that is driving it and all that, it will be very difficult for you to amalgamate all the major interests. Because we've been in this country for a while and we have seen how back and forth they've been moving. If you look at our refineries currently, they are nothing to write home about. They are all moribund. If we have a country that our major source of revenue is oil, and we cannot even be boastful of refineries to put it to put to work, definitely we are just joking. Because even if we cannot fix all the big refinery, we can have modular refineries everywhere.
Licenses were giving out?
Yes, I know of Edo State. At least in 2021, there are 2 modular refineries that are already working. So mostly governments and interests. If the place is open, we hear that Dangote is coming up with his refinery. By the third quarter. It's private driven. if something like that can happen, across all the 30 states of the federation, the place will be open and people will come in and everywhere will be liberalized.
It's all right. He mentioned Dangote refineries, and from the report we got, they'll start testing a few things, in about a few weeks, and then by September or so, or later on in the year, they'll start going into all of those. Is that going to be the biggest game changer that we are, or even the federal government, we're waiting for? Is that the messiah for
to a great extent? I mean, it is said that refinery is meant to be the biggest
single refinery,
in the world. But again, some of us are worried because we're saying to ourselves, we've had a test with a big refinery. Because when we were building ours, they were very big, they were huge. And obviously they failed us. And people will argue, oh, this one is going to be driven by private concern, so maybe there's no need to worry. But I'm worried. I would rather we do the modular arrangement, because for me, you see, when you break some of these things down into smaller bits, it's easier to attend to. And, I'm not a scientist, I am not in science. But when one looks at how easily these boys, in the creeks, are able to build their own funny refineries, and now we're breaking it down. That's what Governor Wike has been doing since he started this year, and for a good reason. I mean, if you go to, I just came back from Port Harcourt. If you go there, you have all these black spots.
Yeah, the suits
everywhere,
all over the place.
It's worrisome. I mean, you're talking about places where you never even, lovely estates. I mean, I was staying with a friend, and you will find suits everywhere, and so it's a good thing to do, to chase those people out. But when you have something that is in the center of your life, when you have something that it is the most, almost like the most important thing, everybody in Nigeria, the moment you say fuel, everybody goes mad. I imagine that if we've been hovering around that thing for this long, and you have seen examples of possibilities, I imagine that by now, licensing of modular refineries will be a foregone conclusion, where you will have these everywhere. I mean, so look at power, electricity. We've talked about it. Lagos State tried it. We've seen situations where I think it was Delta that followed Lagos State at the time. And again, that is also still there. We have a gigantic, arrangement. Instead of having these things in local government areas where it will be powering areas. And you see, I begin to wonder. My brother talked about interest. And I wonder, what interest is more than your name? When you have had the opportunity to become president and you're out there, and you don't think of history, you don't think of the fact that when I leave, particularly now when everything is out there, I mean, what we're doing right now will be on the net, and forever people can go and refer to it and say, oh, this was what Sheyi said.
Exactly.
You understand? So some of us are a little conscious when we say things. We're saying to ourselves, I don't want to be referred to as somebody who just said things for the sake of it. So if you have the opportunity to rule Nigeria, and over 30 years since the 70s, we've been hovering around this, and everybody on the street says, look, the solution is refine these things here. And up till now, look, if you don't have the money to do the gigantic one, can you license people and make sure you follow up with them? Because it has been proven that this thing is not rocket science. These boys, have you seen those things that they do? They throw fire, they'll run back, and the thing would, and before you know it, the thing is going out, and they can have. So if it's that simple, or if it is not as difficult as it is, why are we holding on to those other interests that my brother have defined, and we cannot think of the interest of our names, of history, of making life better for people, of stopping this unnecessary back and forth that is making us look funny in the eyes of the world?
Well, that's a big question. Why can't we handle this thing once and for all, and so on? Now, Hakeem, the issue there is, it is one thing to have all of these issues here and there. It's another thing to communicate, because it looks like government is far away somewhere, and the people are in another faraway place somewhere. When it comes to engagement and communication, what do you find around there? the way to communicate to make Nigerians understand these things?
Yeah, to communicate is very simple in a democracy. You know, in democracy, it evolves around dialogue, conversation, you know, like we are doing conversation here. You know, the conversation can be extended to local government, a lot of interests will come together, you know, and people will now be able to at least pinpoint this is our own major area of concentration. You know, so by and large, I believe government should take it very seriously, engage people positively, engage labor, so that at the end of the day, all those issues will be amalgamated together for us to have, for government to have an informed decision, not back and forth.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it bugs back at the people.
Yeah.
So I think government need to find a way of dishing out information, not that the minister will come today, tell us something, the president will come today, tell us another thing, you know, like that. So basically, area of communication should be well defined, so that an average man on the street will feel some sense of belonging, that this country called Nigeria, at least for once, we're very serious.
Well, the point there is we've had the beautiful days where people will call it the good old days in the 60s and 70s, where it is calculated to be Nigeria's best or most prosperous time, or bracket as the case may be, in the history of their development. Now let's talk about the issue of renewable energy at this time. In 2022, we're still, going back and forth. Like you said, this thing has been on since like the 70s or something.
Yes.
And we're still discussing this close to 4 decades afterwards. The world is moving on, shutting down, planning to shut down fossil fuel.
Yes.
Yes.
Talking about renewable energy, solar, and all of that, energy from waste. But we're still here talking about, in fact, we're still trying to explore for oil the way it was done in the 40s and 50s. Talk to us about this.
No, so that the world is not going to wait for us, unfortunately, because you see, when the time ticks, it doesn't say, this is the time for
this people and for that.
It takes for everyone. And so, like you rightly pointed out, very soon, that gold that we have, that we have been, clamoring and holding on to, very, very soon, it will not be gold again, because the rest of the world have planned and they have a time set to make sure that, for whatever is worth, that vehicles, some countries have said, I think 2023, they will not use vehicles that are using fossil fuel again. They will not. They won't touch it. So it will be left for us to either drink or do whatever we like with that fuel. Because at the end of the day, you see, the truth of the matter is, because it has been proven that those things are also hazardous to the health of the world. You cannot continue to live a world where each time you emit some of these things, it is killing people are having issues of cancer, and also the world has moved. So we need to quickly wake up, because whether we like to, like I said again, the timing, the way things are judged is not for Nigeria or for Europe. No, it is for the whole world. And so at the end of the day, we have done catch up for all of these years. Again, this is coming on. We're going to be catching up again. And I don't know. You see, if it were not affecting our food, our education, our life, our health, because when you waste money on certain areas of this life, what happens is other sides suffer, health suffer, education suffer, security suffer. And so at the end, you now have situations like this. So people wonder, why are we having problems with security? Because we're wasteful. It's as simple as that. If you had educated those people, and if you have provided another alternative for those people, they won't be running around killing themselves, carrying guns and all of that right now. So it's very simple. If you do not provide, if you do not train your child, at the end of the day, that child, people say, that child will end up selling up your house. It's as simple. It's simple though. These are very, very straightforward things. And Nigerians and Nigeria, government and the people must understand. we're going into another election here. What are we asking for? Who are we going to vote for? What are we really emphasizing on? What are the things we're looking at?
What are the issues?
Are you bothering about, so this person is from your part of Nigeria, or this person is going to give you food? How long are you going to eat food for? Because at the end of the day, you now see that if somebody does not do his job, security is in question, health is in question, education is in question, all of these things are in question. And again, like you pointed out, the rest of the world are moving to the next chapter, which is renewable energy. What have we done? How prepared are we? And whether we're prepared or not, they are moving. So what will happen to us?
Big question. What will happen when the world moves on? Maybe they have to drag us somehow, and then we're following. You know, now some people have, in fact, some politicians have said that this subsidy thing back and forth is all political more than economic. Some have said that the government is doing this now to create a feeling of, okay, we're sensitive to you, you know, because elections are coming. Do you share the same perspective?
Definitely, there's no two way about it. You know, there's no two way about it. It's definitely political. You know, it's definitely political because the government knows that if they implement that subsidy regime now, there will be so many backlashes from every corner of the country. You know, because the most vulnerable, how do they cope? Economy is biting very hard. How do they cope? You know, and if you look at our fixed salary earners, how do they cope with the emerging economy? Definitely it's not going to work. So the bottom line is that government must be able to put his house in order. The economy must be put in proper perspective. So that at least people will be able to understand what government is talking about, and they will easily fall in. But if you are not even sure of where your next square meal is coming from, and what you are getting from government is increase in fuel, which of course, if you understand the increment in fuel, the rhetoric and the so much effect that will come with it, definitely government is not going to. So to me, it is purely political.
All right. Well, let's leave that for those who, you know, interpret these things and see how, you know, whatever they come up with. But we all wait to see how these things pan out. It's a good thing there won't be strike by the organized labor anymore, but we're moving on. Thank you very much, Kim Adeleke, for coming on the program.
Thank you.
We appreciate you. And Oluwaseyi Adeyemo, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity
Great.
again.
Thank you. Right.